The Bucks path forward, same path it's always been. We tell you exactly what that is coming up next on Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. I'm Justin Garcia, joined as always by Camille Davis. You can hear me on the Bucks Radio Network. You can find Camille's work on the Technical Foul podcast and on the Locked On NBA show, as well as you guys had the recap of Game 5 of the finals last night, as we are now one game away from the Oklahoma City Thunder being crowned NBA champions. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. We mentioned at the top, Camille, the path forward for the Bucks. Same as it's always been, and same as we assumed it would be coming into the offseason, as there was, I guess, some reporting coming out yesterday, but just more the notion that, hey, one of the pitches, we heard Doc Rivers was a big piece, as you mentioned the name in Duck, but we heard Doc Rivers and pitching Giannis on that was a big piece of it. And now the other one that the Bucks brass are pitching to Giannis for this upcoming season is, look, Dame is going to miss at the very least an extended period of time in this season, maybe all of it. We need somebody to be our point guard. So that in turn would be you. And that's exactly what the Bucks did to close out the season last year. It yielded the results. And, you know, there was some of us that pointed out, I shouldn't lump myself in there, but a lot of people pointed out, you know, the numbers that Nikola Jokić puts up, if you asked Giannis to play the same way, I think he would do the same. And that's basically what we saw during that 8-game win streak and for portions of the playoffs as well. So it appears that's the pitch to Giannis. And to that, I say, I mean, no duh, right?
Absolutely no duh. Like you mentioned, the last few games of the regular season when the Bucks went on that 8-0 run, like some of the numbers that Giannis were putting up was crazy. Like he had the 20 assist game for sure that all sticks out, but he had games with 11 assists, 10 assists, 10 assists, 15 assists. Like he was really racking them up at the end. And I think a lot about what he mentioned when he made the analogy to the cookie jar. And he's like, you know, running point is like having a cookie jar where when I'm running point, I have the cookie jar in my hand. So maybe I, you know, eat my cookies a little bit slower because I know I have control to when I get these cookies. Otherwise, when you don't have the cookie jar in your hands, when you're not running point in Giannis's worldview, you might be a little bit more selfish when you get a cookie because you don't know when you get the next cookie. And his analogy with that is just getting the ball. The ball is the cookie. So for Giannis, if he has the ball in his hand more, he feels even more comfortable making the decisions of here's when I pass to my teammates. Here's when I actually go for it. Just being able to be in control of that. We saw the results to end this regular season, and we've seen flashes of it before, like when Jason Kidd was here, really trying to push forward the point Giannis part of his game. So like we know it's in him. We just haven't seen him have to execute that way in some years. So to be able to see him do it for a full season, I think that's going to be really fun.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we saw it for 10% of the season last year, and to me, I mean, that is clearly the path forward, at least this season, especially as you continue to knock around terms like gap year. But to me, it elevates the importance of retaining guys like especially a Gary Trent Jr. because, as you mentioned, the ball is going to be in Giannis's hand, and he's dictating to guys, here's where you go. Here's where I'm going to be looking for you. That, you know, chemistry becomes so very important when that's the case. And, you know, I mean, this is not meant to knock down Damian Lillard at all. But when you look at this Bucks offense from a year ago, just on both ends of the floor, when it was just Giannis and no Dame is when they really did find something. And I think a lot of that is probably swung by those last 8 games of the regular season. But overall, they had a +9 net rating in the minutes where Giannis was on the floor and Dame was off. They had a 124.3 offensive rating, which is pretty good. Camille, it would be among the best in the league. And, you look at the most impactful lineups offensively, believe it or not, it was those groupings where you had Giannis playing alongside Kyle Kuzma and Taurean Prince, and then either Ryan Rollins or Kevin Porter Jr. in the backcourt, and Brook Lopez there in the front court. But even the Giannis and Bobby Portis, we've talked about how much those lineups really clicked. You didn't see a ton of it. It was only 88 possessions with Giannis, Bobby, Gary Trent Jr., Kevin Porter Jr., and AJ Green, which I think is a lineup. If you can retain those guys, a lot of Bucks fans would be salivating over. But again, very strong offensive rating. I mean, in 88 possessions, it was over a 150 offensive rating, a good defensive rating. So the numbers back up. This may be what we have to transition to, even assuming you get Damian Lillard back next season, late in the season. Do you have to revisit what's the role and how do we utilize that? And what does that mean for the final year of the contract? But if that's the sell, I think that is the number one starting place because, as we mentioned, there is more flexibility, and that's a method that works. It works statistically for you in the regular season. We can debate the value of players the Denver Nuggets have versus what the Bucks currently have right now. I would side with Denver, but it has worked for the Denver Nuggets, and you're in an inferior conference. That, to me, that's the one card you keep up your sleeve to say, look, we haven't written off the season. You've heard gap year kicked around. We still think we can be right around where we were last year if we keep this group and we play this way.
Yeah, it's like I don't necessarily use the gap year term because I feel like it's just a kind of a retool. Like we're semantics for
Well, as
the
we
most.
mentioned, not to cut you off, but what is a gap year when you've just lost
Right.
in the first round 3 years in a row? Like, how is this any different?
Exactly. Where it's like I don't know how this is a gap year where it just seems like you're changing your scheme. You're changing the way that you're playing going forward. So if anything, it's a year where you're just retooling and starting to get guys that fit what this new offensive direction is for this team. And again, we mentioned the new direction appears to be Giannis running point for the most part. The ball is going to be in his hand more. And watching the finals, like my husband came in the room for it, but he was saying like, man, these two teams are fast. Like the pace that these two teams play at are fast. And it's like, well, how can the Bucks continue to get faster? Which I know for some Bucks fans, that's a complaint that they wish that the Bucks would have made some changes to when Giannis was even younger. So Giannis could run even more with a faster group. But just getting some guys that can run outside of Giannis, like the pathway forward doesn't feel as strenuous to me as some are projecting. And I think part of it is because what the Bucks have gone through the last 3 years, yes, health played a big role into why the Bucks were not able to achieve what they were looking to achieve, but it's still 3 straight first round exits here. So you're coming into this season and it's time to do something a little bit different. And it's putting the ball in Giannis's hands. It's getting those shooters around him. It is what we've kicked around on this show so the everydayers know, but I really do want to see a team where Giannis is your oldest Buck. Now, Dame is on the team, so he's older than Giannis, but I'm saying that in the sense that we're not expecting to see a lot of Dame so far this season. Like if he comes back, it's going to be late in the year. And when Dame does come back, I think that they don't overhaul the offense at that point, and it's still the ball in Giannis's hands. It's just that Dame is playing a little bit more off ball, and you have a guy there in Damian Lillard that you would trust in bigger spots if needed.
Yeah, and that's going to be the interesting thing to see. I mean, number one, how this roster shakes out with who's still here and those big free agents that the Bucks are going to need to retain here, or what Plan B is. But as we hinted to as well, and you just brought up now, what's the role for all these pieces once you do come to full strength? But this kind of ties back to one of the things I want to get into a little bit later in the show. In that, what is the actual rebuild process and how long is this if you still have this guy and these numbers that back up this style of play works in this iteration of the NBA? Speaking of free agents, there is a conversation that I think some Bucks fans have grown sick of, especially our stance on it, but it did get interesting over the weekend with another big man that we saw come off the market. So we'll get into that conversation coming up next on Locked On Bucks. The NBA playoffs are in full swing every night, delivering highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's game-winning shots or breakout performances, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. If you got a read on which players are going to show up in the biggest moments, and you could be tracking their trends, how would that help you build your next bet? Maybe you know who's heating up. Why not back that up with a same game parlay? And think about $200 in bonus bets to add the excitement if your first $5 bet hits. If you're new to FanDuel, it is the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. So over the weekend, Steven Adams agreed to an extension with the Houston Rockets, a 3-year, $39 million deal. Now, I'll preface with this. The Rockets were linked to Brook Lopez a couple of summers ago, and I think many thought maybe they revisit that conversation. Steven Adams is 6 years younger than Brook Lopez, but he's still a player that certainly has had a number of health questions through the years in games played. I mean, you look at missing an entire season in 23-24 with that injury. Played 58 games last year, played 42 games the year prior with the Memphis Grizzlies. Maybe that's the road you head down with Brook Lopez to preserve him as well. But to see Steven Adams get $13 million per year. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying the Bucks have to pay Brook Lopez $13 million.
Right.
But the point we've kind of made is, look, I get at least half of you guys are over it. The market is going to be more robust in terms of the dollars that Brook Lopez gets than I think a lot of people expect. And I even talked about it with Matt on the show last week. He's going to command the most money of anybody on the open market outside of Bobby Portis that the Bucks have, right?
Yes. Yes. And when you see Steven Adams get 13 mil annually, and and it's not to like just try to disparage Steven Adams, because I think he's a good center. And when you find someone who fits your culture, fits your locker room, gives you the veteran presence that you were looking for, like he has done in Houston, I understand when both parties are like, you know what, this worked last year. Let's continue this partnership going forward. And with that, you look at a Brook Lopez, who is an older guy, 37 years old. We know not fleet of foot at this point in his career. We know he's somebody who thrives more so on a drop coverage. He thrives being closer to the rim. So you have to go to a team that can scheme you in the proper way. But Brook Lopez still does provide rim protection. You have strong point of attack defenders on your team. Brook Lopez, you can do a lot worse than Brook Lopez behind you. And on top of that, offensively, he can stretch the floor. And to have a true 7-footer that can play defense at the rim and stretch the floor is rare. So when I saw Steven Adams get the 13 million, I'm like, oh, Brook might take somebody's full mid-level. Like, Brook might get that type of market. And again, if that is the price for a Brook Lopez, then I don't have as much interest in the Bucks retaining him, just because I think there are other things the Bucks need to focus their attention on. And that is going to be a hole that they have to look to fill in that big rotation. But for Brook Lopez, he should see that contract and smile and be like, okay, yeah, I can get paid at least one more good time here before, 40 comes even closer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you there too, in that if that's what the market is for Brook Lopez, and it's going to cost the full mid-level, it's going to cost $13 to $14 million to retain him, then hey, you know what? We tried. We had a nice run. It's time to part ways here. But if it's half of that, because here's the other thing. Number one, if let's say Brook Lopez is back in a Bucks uniform next season, I don't think any of us expect that because of what we just mentioned. I think there's going to be interest in a stronger market out there. But if he is back, I'm not going to push back on the notion that you should play him less. Number one, to fit the style that you're going to need to play, but also to preserve him a little more. I would assume that means he may be coming off the bench and his minutes would be reduced significantly. But I do think there's something to be said for having that type of player, and once again, having an asset that you can move, having a tradable contract to piece together with something else, especially once you get into the 26-27 season where you have more cap space opening up, where Damian Lillard becomes an expiring contract. Pat Connaughton would be off the books at that point. Who knows what happens with the other guys, with Bobby Portis and Gary Trent Jr. and those players. But you do need those types of deals. And that's, one of the things that I think the Bucks really missed on, 4 summers ago already? God, 4 summers ago, or falls ago, basically, when they let PJ Tucker walk. And there was a lot made over the Bucks going cheap. And as we've seen, that's not the case, that they've paid and paid and paid through the years. But what got lost in that shuffle was not just, hey, would PJ Tucker have helped you out in spots, especially in that series against the Celtics? Yeah, probably. But also to have a deal that you could trade, because we saw shortly thereafter the Bucks got into the spot where they had none of those contracts that were in the mid-level. They just had the max of Giannis, richer deals in terms of Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday, and then basically close to the minimums. So there's importance in retaining those types of deals as well. There is a walk-away figure, but if you can hover around there, I'm not. I know the majority of you listening are against it. I'm not opposed to saying, okay, yeah, Brook, we'll pay to keep you here.
Yeah, and I think the part of that, sometimes I think people just hear let's keep Brook, but they don't listen to the rest of the context around what we're saying about, okay, if you do, these other things need to also be true. Also, don't think of him as a starter at this point with the direction that this team appears to be going in. Also, don't want to see him playing, 25, 30 minutes a night consistently. Like, that's not the plan for Brook Lopez. And again, it's not paying him what he was getting paid prior. It's a cheaper deal, a lesser role, be able just to have a different pitch to throw off of your bench for another big in your rotation who does provide a valuable skill set, especially next to a Giannis who has never really embraced the idea of playing center full time and just kind of likes to have that other big out there so he can be that help defender a little bit more. So yeah, like, again, if the price is right for Brook Lopez, which is, $6-7 million somewhere in there, then absolutely I will love for the Bucks to bring him back. I just don't see the price being that low for Brook Lopez this summer, especially after seeing Steven Adams' contract with the Rockets coming in at about $13 million annually. Like, Brook Lopez is going to get some money. And ultimately, when the day comes and Brook does sign somewhere, I do hope at the very least that the reaction to Bucks fans is just appreciation for the last few years that he's had while he's been in the Milwaukee Bucks jersey, because Brook Lopez has been fantastic for this franchise more often than not during his time here.
Yeah, I don't think he's getting 3 years. And can he get 3 years?
That'd push him to 40, wouldn't it? So I'm not.
Yeah, I forget the 38 rule, but regardless, we talked about it on yesterday's show too, kicking around hair, the magic of possibility. I think that's gone now. The Rockets, no longer a possibility. You keep coming back to that name, the Golden State Warriors, who've apparently been linked to both Brook and Bobby Portis. So there's going to be names that are going to be interesting to monitor here in terms of their pursuit of Brook Lopez. And again, what is that walk-away figure if you're the Bucks? That's the last thing to touch on here. What would it be for you, Camille? We're not going over this figure.
Honestly, just given the dollars that the Bucks have, and I know that they have the rights on Brook Lopez, so they can fudge things a little bit in that sense. But honestly, for me, once we start getting to like 8, 9 million, although it would be tradable, like, just based on everything else that they have going on and just ideally trying to be a first apron team if possible this year, like, I wouldn't go above that.
Well, I would assume they are going to be a first apron team because you're going to use the non-taxpayer
lock you in at that
mid-level. Yeah, I was at like 7 to 8 million. If we're using more than half of that figure, you want to be using the non-taxpayer mid-level because you have his bird rights. But if it's in that range, that's where I'd probably say, yeah, I don't think so. You can't do 10. So 7 to 9 million to me is that figure there. So that'll be interesting to monitor here is what teams do we start to hear that noise pick up even more? And we're going to start to hear that starting next week as we are already just over a week away from the NBA draft. And that's when everything kicks into hyperspeed here with the draft. And then just days later, free agency beginning. So rounding it back to the first point on point Giannis and how the Bucks can pull themselves out of this, it does lead to a larger discussion too about the state of the league as a whole. We've seen some others chime in on that, and it does make you wonder, look, if you have a good off season, are the Bucks actually in a better spot than we've given them credit for? We'll get into that conversation next. As I mentioned, the Oklahoma City Thunder win last night. They are now one win away from Oklahoma City's first NBA championship. I've seen a lot of that, but let's not forget Seattle Supersonics are part of actually, did the Sonics win a title or did it just play in the finals?
The
Now I don't
Sonics
even
won a
know.
title. I'm pretty sure they
That's
won a
what I
title.
thought. I thought they won a title in the 70s, but regardless, Thunder win last night, so they're a win away from a championship. Boy, you talk about catching arrows here. Tough scene if you're a pro Tyrese Halliburton defender after last night's performance. But let's not get sidetracked. The notion of this rebuild, reload, and just the overall state of the NBA. You shared something with me earlier in the day, Camille, coming from Rafael Barlow, about what is the real window, like length in the league these days. And, this CBA, as you and I've talked about many a times,
Mhm.
it is no longer built to build dynasties. This CBA is put in place to destroy dynasties. And I wonder whenever this, and I'd have to look up, I would assume it's 10 years from now, but whenever the current CBA expires, how much radical change we see to the new one. But I've said it many times. I think your window now is 3 years. And, if you're the Bucks and you look at that and you say, we still got this guy, he's still in his prime. We have more flexibility, may not have all the assets that you would love to have at this point, but we have more flexibility. If we can lean into this in an inferior conference, we feel like we can at least be back in the conversation, not as a favorite, but that could shape up to be a top 4 team. And then who knows from there?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why you see a team like the Orlando Magic going for it, because they're like, you know what? This conference is open. Like, why would we not be aggressive in this moment and go for it? And for the Bucks side, like the message from Rafael Barlow, the tweet X, I don't know what you actually call those anymore on that site, but it was in reference to Stephen A. Smith's rant that he had on First Take, saying that, if Giannis doesn't win another championship, he's a disappointment. Like, he's a disappointment. And just the idea of like, one, no, because this is a guy who was drafted where he was drafted as somebody who was not expected to contribute to an NBA team in his first year. The Bucks were really bad, 15 wins that first year. He continues to play. He continues to work. He becomes an MVP. He becomes a champion. Like, there is no way when you look at the Giannis story, you're going to say underachiever with everything that he did. Now, yes, Giannis has said himself, want that second championship. I will feel like I have let myself down if I don't get to that second one. That's a personal thing for him. But his career as a whole, definitely not an underachieving type of situation. And Raphael's point was just like with the CBA, there is no longer an NBA of dynasties. Like you mentioned, Justin, they're trying to make a league of parity where you don't know who's going to win it year in and year out. You might have some favorites, but it's not such as a way it was, when the Heatles were running through things, or those LeBron years in the East where you pretty much knew his team was going to come out. Now it's a conversation around different teams and the style, and if they get this matchup and it might be this. So I don't look at Giannis as somebody who underachieved feeling gets one ring. Neither would I with Nikola Jokić. Like, not an underachievement in this particular era of basketball. Yes, you want more, but with the way the CBA is, which we mentioned, like, I think it's going to make teams emphasize player development more. We think it's going to make teams the window shorter. the question is, how long will we see what just was built in Orlando? How long will that last? We don't know, but you try to ride it during the time when you have it. So for me, in thinking of like Giannis and in the Bucks, like, yeah, you keep at it because there's a chance that things break your way. You're hot at the right time. Something can happen. And for this upcoming season, it's just building in that right direction. Like find the pieces for this new style and then continue to add on to that next off season when you have a little bit more assets available to you and more flexibility and a first round draft pick.
Yeah, and seeing how this comes together, like that to me is going to be the big thing too for how the Bucks pull themselves out of it. We said here's the clear path to do so at the top of the show, but just as we mentioned, look, the importance of Giannis is it's several things. Number one, it keeps you relevant. Um, it has players like Gary Trent Jr. that are saying, "I'm willing to play for the veteran minimum because I'm playing alongside this guy," and obviously Damian Lillard and the relationship he had with him. But those types of players, if Giannis is gone, you're not in that conversation for guys that are saying, "Yeah, I'll take the minimum to come play here for that." The infrastructure he created and everything that has built up around the arena is a big thing. But, to get back to that second point, you have a season of Giannis as basically Nikola Jokić as he played those final 8 games of the regular season. And if we see, under the radar too, this is the, oh, by the way, how Giannis finally gets firmly in MVP conversation and not just, yeah, he finished third again. If the Bucks are flirting with 5th, 4th in the Eastern Conference, and Giannis is putting up those numbers where it's, man, look at what he's doing. It's basically all Giannis. That's how you get there. And that's also how next summer, once again, teams or players saying, all right, they got more money. This guy, if he's going to be there, I want to see what I can do playing alongside him. So I do think the big thing the Bucks are missing here is, we talked about windows and what Raphael had to say too, but you have to close the window every once in a while and then reopen it, just like every season. And the Bucks never did that throughout this process. And that's one of the things I know Ben Thompson brought this up with the Celtics when he was fighting the good fight among Bucks fans, pushing back on Bill Simmons about a month ago and saying, look, the thing that you guys should do is look into trading everything but Jason Tatum and just move on and play for a year, 2 years from now. Because in his mind, his point was that is what the Bucks should have done after a year or so coming out of, you lose to the Celtics, you lose to the Heat. That's when you say, okay, let's start to build this back up again so we can be stronger a year, 2 years from now, instead of just, let's just keep pushing everything further and further down the road, because eventually you're going to have to pay that credit card bill. And that's where the Bucks are currently at right now. But I think they can do more than just pay the minimums on that monthly balance.
Yeah, I think they have the tools to do that this year as well. Just establishing what that new foundation is going to snowballing that credit card debt at this point, and really trying to pay it off with playing some guys that maybe in years past you wouldn't have seen as much run from. Like, I know the Bucks only have a second round draft pick, a middle second round draft pick, but as we've seen with some guys who develop into like really key role players, like there's talent to be found in the second round. You just got to be the one to actually mine it. Like you have to make the right selection in that moment, which is the difficult part of the draft. Like you got to try to find the talent in it. But just seeing more young guys get run. And that's been a critique or something that I've seen a lot of Bucks fans wanting of like, we should get younger. We should get younger. And the pushback to that has been like, well, you're competing for championships. Most coaches are going to lean on the vets because they trust in what they're able to do and they're trying to get as many wins as possible. When you go younger, one thing that you are going to have to account for a bit is the learning pains and the growing pains that come from young players being put in bigger situations. And the thing that makes me excited about seeing that with the Bucks is also with Giannis, because this past season, we saw Giannis at his most vocal that we've ever seen him as a leader, like just in the steps that he's taking as a leader for the team and really coaching up, like seeing him take that next step in addition to him having the ball in his hands. Like one thing about point guards that you like to see is them being very vocal, very communicate. Like, so, and I think with Giannis taking that step last year of his leadership style of being more vocal, being very more direct with his teammates, seeing how that plays out in a season where he's running point more consistently with what we're assuming to be a younger team around him. I'm really interested in watching this version of the Bucks.
Yeah, it's not a group I'm willing to just write off and say, well, here's where they are. I think I was a little not quite as bullish as I should have been on the Magic yesterday, because the more you think about it, the more you look at that roster and say, man,
It fits.
that fits. And I do think it's going to be in vogue to come into the regular season saying the Magic and Pacers are the two best teams in the league. And I really like the way the Magic match up against most of those teams, honestly. So it's going to be interesting to monitor what teams like Cleveland, what happens with Boston and that type of group. Even Indiana, as we talk about the window being what it is. I mean, this is year 2 in that window for the Indiana Pacers. So how much longer does that stay open for this team? Leave your thoughts in the comments on Giannis as the point center for this group. Some of the numbers we referenced that we saw offensively with that group. And I hesitate to say this, but your walk-away figure for Brook Lopez, it cannot be $1. I'll say that. It has to be in the millions. But leave your thoughts, and we'll address those on some upcoming shows. We're also going to try to pull together a mailbag here. So leave some questions in the comments. We'll tweet out the email address, or tweet them at Camille and I as well. And we'll loop in Frank and put together another mailbag episode coming up sometime here in the near future. That'll do it for today's show. For Camille, I'm Justin. We'll talk with you guys once again tomorrow on Locked On Bucks.